My name is Donna Ainsworth. I am 32 years old. And 6 days before my wedding, I found out my mom had accepted $40,000 from another family to stop me from marrying the man I love. She didn't tell me. She didn't tell my dad. She took the money, wrote a speech for my father to read at the altar, and invited the other man to sit in the third row. 10 minutes before the ceremony, my maid of honor looked at me and said 3 words. Don't go out there. I peeked through the door. My entire family was standing at the altar. Microphone, letter, phone camera rolling. What they did next was supposed to break me. It didn't. Welcome back to Calm Drama Stories, where real family moments become the stories you can't stop listening to. If this one hits close to home, drop a comment below and be sure to subscribe. I grew up in a split-level house 11 miles outside Knoxville, Tennessee. Nothing fancy. 3 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, a backyard with a rusted swing set my father never took down. My dad, Richard, worked 31 years for the Postal Service. My mom, Janet, managed the front office of a dental clinic until she retired early at 54. My sister Tessa is 5 years younger than me, and from the day she was born, the math in our house changed. I became the responsible one, the one who cooked Thanksgiving sides at 14. The one who drove my grandmother to her dialysis appointments every Tuesday because my mother said she was too tired. The one who babysat Tessa every Friday night so my parents could go to dinner. My mother had a phrase she used like a hymn. You're the big sister. You set the example. So I said it. I paid my own way through Pellissippi State Community College, working the morning shift at a cafe on Kingston Pike. I transferred to the University of Tennessee. I graduated with a paralegal studies degree and 0 help from anyone sitting in my childhood living room. Today, I work as a litigation paralegal at Brennan & Associates, a family law firm downtown. I handle custody disputes, asset division, protection orders. I bought my own townhouse 2 years ago. I owe nothing to anyone. But in my family, doing well for yourself doesn't earn you applause. It earns you more responsibilities. More holidays to cook. More errands to run. More silence when you ask for something in return. I've never asked my parents for rent money. I've never asked them for a ride. But somehow, I was always the one who owed them something. My mother runs our family the way a mayor runs a small town. She controls the budget, the schedule, the narrative. If you disagree, you don't get voted out. You get guilt-tripped until you fold. Her favorite weapon is a single sentence. After everything I've done for this family. She said it when I told her I couldn't drive Tessa to her hair appointment. She said it when I missed Easter brunch because I had a filing deadline. She said it so often that by the time I turned 30, I could feel the words forming before she opened her mouth. My sister Tessa is 27. She lives in a 1-bedroom apartment my mother pays for. She calls herself a content creator. She has 3,200 followers. She posts brunch photos and outfit reels and occasionally a 30-second video about journaling. My mother bought Tessa a car for her 25th birthday. My mother has never bought me anything that didn't come with a condition. And then there's my dad, Richard Ainsworth, the ghost at the head of the table. He sits in his recliner. He reads the Knoxville News Sentinel. When there's a conflict, he says 4 words. Listen to your mother. Then he turns the page. I internalized this dynamic for 32 years. I told myself it was normal. Every family has roles. Every eldest daughter carries weight. But 3 years ago, something shifted. I met someone who looked at me and saw a person. Not a function. Not a fixer. Not the dependable one. His name is Marcus. And when I brought him home for Thanksgiving, everything changed. Marcus Thompson is a structural engineer. He designs bridges and parking structures for a firm in West Knoxville. He is 34 years old, 6'1", quiet in the way that makes people lean in when he speaks. We met at a fundraiser for the Knoxville Area Urban League. He asked me about my work. I talked for 40 minutes. He listened to every word. 4 years ago, I brought him to Thanksgiving dinner at my parents' house. He wore a pressed shirt. He brought a bottle of wine and a bouquet of sunflowers for my mother. He shook my father's hand and said, "Sir." My mother's reaction was a smile that didn't reach her eyes. She set an extra place at the table and said, "He seems nice." That was it. No follow-up question, no warmth. Just 2 words wrapped in cold politeness. After dinner, while Marcus helped wash dishes, my mother pulled me into the hallway. "Are you sure about this? You could do so much better, Donna." She didn't say what she meant. She never does. But the meaning sat between us like furniture. Tessa passed through the kitchen, glanced at Marcus, and said, "He's not what I imagined for you, sis." Then she laughed and walked away. My father said nothing. He watched football in the den with the volume up. That night, after Marcus left, I found my mother sitting at the kitchen table writing something on a sheet of yellow legal paper. I asked her what it was. She folded it and tucked it into her purse. "Just notes for Christmas planning," she said. I didn't think about that moment again for 3 years. I should have. The next 4 years played out like a pattern you only see when you step back far enough. Year 1. My mother forgot to invite Marcus to Christmas dinner. She said it was just family. I reminded her Marcus was part of my life. She said, "Well, he's not family yet, is he?" Year 2. My mother organized a neighborhood barbecue and introduced me to Derek Whitmore, Carol's son. He just moved back from Atlanta. Wonderful young man. Derek was polite, bland, and clearly placed next to me on purpose. Marcus was standing 6 feet away holding a plate of corn. Year 3. My mother stopped asking about Marcus entirely. She referred to him as your friend. When I corrected her, she changed the subject. When Marcus called to wish her a happy birthday, she let it go to voicemail. He never complained. Not once. On the drive home from every dinner, every holiday, every awkward Sunday visit, Marcus held my hand and said nothing unkind about any of them. That restraint cost him something. I could see it in the way he exhaled when we pulled into our driveway. I started spending less time at my parents' house. Fewer Sunday dinners, fewer phone calls. My mother noticed immediately. "You've changed since you met him," she said. That sentence was a grenade wrapped in concern. She wanted me to apologize. I didn't. What I didn't know was that my mother had been making plans. Real plans. The kind that involve handshakes and bank transfers and a man's family willing to pay for an outcome. I wouldn't learn any of that until 6 days before my wedding. And by then, the price tag on my life had already been set. Marcus proposed on the bank of the Tennessee River, near the same walking trail where we had our first date. No ring box hidden in dessert, no flash mob, just the 2 of us on a bench at sunset and a small velvet box he pulled from his jacket pocket. I said yes before he finished the sentence. I called my mother that evening. She picked up on the second ring. I told her. And for 3 full seconds the line was silent. "Well," she said, "I hope you've thought this through." That was it. No congratulations, no excitement, no questions about the ring or the date or how I felt. Just the hum of the refrigerator on her end, and a sentence that landed like a door closing. Tessa called me an hour later. "Are you serious? You're getting married before me?" She didn't say congratulations either. She asked about the ring size, the venue, the budget. She asked if she could be a bridesmaid and then complained about the color palette before I had even chosen one. My father was the only one who said something decent. "Congratulations, sweetheart." 6 seconds. Then he handed the phone back to my mother. 3 days later, I took Tessa to try on bridesmaid dresses at a boutique in Westtown Mall. While I was in the fitting room, I heard her voice through the wall. She was on FaceTime with a friend. "Can you believe she's doing this? This is going to be such a disaster." She laughed. Her friend laughed back. I stood in the fitting room holding a hanger and staring at the wall. Then I put my shoes back on and walked out. 3 weeks after the engagement, my mother called me with an unusual request. My mother's voice was different on the phone that night. Softer, almost careful. Like she was reading from a script she had rehearsed. "Donna, I want to help with the wedding. I've been saving for years. I can contribute $20,000. I sat on the edge of my bed and blinked. My mother had never offered me money. Not for college. Not for my car. Not when I was 22 and eating ramen 3 nights a week. And now, out of nowhere, $20,000. "Mom," I said. "That's..." Are you serious? Of course I'm serious. You're my daughter. I just want to be involved in the planning. Is that too much to ask? My throat tightened. I almost cried. I wanted so badly to believe this was a turning point, that my mother had finally seen what Marcus and I had built and decided to support it. That after 4 years of silence and sidelong glances and your friend, she was coming around. I said yes. I told her she could help with the guest list and the seating chart. I even apologized for being distant. She said, "It's okay, honey. We're family." That night, Marcus sat on the couch and listened. His expression didn't change. He set down his glass and said, "Your mom's never offered you money before. Just be careful." I waved it off. Maybe she's finally coming around. Marcus didn't push. He never pushes. He just nodded and kissed my forehead. I found out later that the $20,000 my mother offered wasn't hers. It had never been hers. Not a single dollar of it came from a savings account with her name on it. My mother inserted herself into the wedding planning with the precision of a woman who had been waiting for exactly this opportunity. Within 2 weeks, she had added 30 names to the guest list. People I had never met. People Marcus had never heard of. When I asked who they were, she said, "Family friends. Donna. It would be rude not to invite them." I scrolled through the additions on my laptop one evening and stopped at a name. Derek Whitmore plus guest. I called my mother. "Why is Derek Whitmore on the guest list? Carol is my best friend. Derek is like family. It would break Carol's heart if he wasn't there." I started to argue. Then I stopped. It was one guest. One seat. I told myself it wasn't worth the fight. My mother also suggested changes to the seating chart. She wanted Derek in row 3, close to the altar. I asked why. She said something about Carol's knees and aisle access. It made no sense, but I was tired and overwhelmed and drowning in vendor emails, so I let it go. Tessa refused to try on her bridesmaid dress for the second fitting. "That color washes me out," she said. "I want champagne instead of dusty rose." I changed the color. I shouldn't have. By now the wedding was 6 weeks out. 200 guests confirmed. Venue deposit paid, caterer locked, florist booked. I couldn't cancel without losing $14,000. And then, 6 days before the ceremony, my phone buzzed at 11 at night. Rachel's name on the screen. Rachel, my maid of honor. Rachel, who never calls after 9. "We need to talk," she said. "Tonight. I'll be there in 15 minutes. If you've ever had someone in your family try to control who you love or how you live your life, you know exactly what this feels like. If Donna's story is hitting close to home, drop a comment and tell me. Did your family ever cross a line at a moment that was supposed to be yours? Hit subscribe so you don't miss how this ends." Rachel sat on my kitchen floor with her shoes still on and her coat half off. She was holding her phone the way people hold evidence. Tight. Screen down. Like she wasn't sure she should show me. Rachel Kim is my best friend from college and Marcus's cousin on his mother's side. She is the person I trust most in the world outside of Marcus himself. When she says something matters, it matters. She turned the phone over. "I need you to read this." It was a screenshot from a group chat, a nail salon group, Carol Whitmore's salon, where Rachel gets her nails done every other Thursday. Carol had sent a message to the wrong thread. The message was addressed to my mother. "Is everything ready for Saturday? Derek is nervous. I told him once the intervention works, Donna will come around. The $40,000 was worth every penny." I read it twice. Then a third time. $40,000. My mother had told me she was contributing 20, but the real number, the full number, was double that. And it hadn't come from savings. It had come from Carol Whitmore. Rachel scrolled down. There was more. A second screenshot. My mother's reply to Carol. "Don't worry. Once Richard reads the speech, Donna won't have a choice. She won't humiliate herself in front of 200 people." I set the phone on the counter. My hands were shaking. I stared at the kitchen tile for a long time. $40,000. My mother had taken $40,000 from another woman's family to arrange my marriage to that woman's son. I sat on my kitchen floor for 20 minutes. Then I called Marcus. Marcus walked through my front door 14 minutes after I called. He didn't ask what happened. He sat on the floor next to me and waited. I cried for about 5 minutes. Not the pretty kind, the kind that sounds like something tearing. Then I wiped my face with my sleeve and told him everything. He listened. He read the screenshots. He set the phone down. And then he said, "We're not canceling this wedding." I looked at him. His jaw was tight, but his voice was steady. "This is our day. They don't get to take it." We sat at the kitchen table until 1 in the morning. We made a plan. No confrontation before the ceremony. No warning to my mother. No canceled venue. No changed locks. We would let the intervention happen. And when it was done, I would respond. With facts. With proof. With documents. I am a litigation paralegal. I compile evidence for a living. I organize discovery binders, sort financial disclosures, prepare exhibits for depositions. I've done it 1,000 times for strangers. Now I would do it once for myself. Rachel helped us pull the records. Carol Whitmore's Venmo history was partially public. 2 transfers to Janet Ainsworth, $25,000 in March of last year, $15,000 in August. The memo on both? Wedding arrangement. We printed the screenshots, the transaction records, and the original guest list, my version with 170 names, compared to my mother's edited version with 200. Marcus called our officiant Reverend Patricia Miles. He told her the ceremony might be interrupted. He asked if she would be willing to proceed once the interruption ended. She said, "Absolutely." We sealed the documents in a manila envelope. Rachel would carry it into the bridal suite on the day of the wedding. The 3 hardest days of my life were not the days after the wedding. They were the 3 days before it. 72 hours of pretending, smiling through the final venue walkthrough, nodding while the florist adjusted centerpieces, sitting across from my mother at the rehearsal brunch and listening to her talk about place cards. Janet called me 3 times a day. "Are you excited? Is everything perfect? I can't wait to see you walk down that aisle." Each call was another layer of acting I didn't know I had in me. "Yes, Mom. Everything's perfect." At night, I printed documents, Venmo records, screenshot comparisons, the guest list side by side. I organized them the same way I organized trial exhibits. Chronological, tabbed, labeled. Marcus tucked the stack into the manila envelope and drove it to Rachel's apartment. She locked it in her closet. On Wednesday, 2 days before the wedding, I told Hector Vega. Hector is the senior partner at Brennan & Associates. He has been my mentor since I started at the firm 6 years ago. He was already coming to the wedding as a guest. When I told him what was happening, he went quiet for 10 seconds. Then he said, "If you need me to say anything, I'm there. Row 12, seat 3. I'll be watching." The rehearsal dinner was Thursday night, 40 people at an Italian restaurant near the venue. My mother stood and raised her glass. "To my beautiful daughter," she said. "And her," she paused, "future." She didn't say Marcus's name. Not once. She toasted my future without naming the man I was spending it with. I smiled. I touched my wine glass to hers, and I counted the hours. The rehearsal dinner should have been a celebration. Instead, it felt like surveillance. My mother worked the room with a hostess's efficiency, touching arms and whispering to people I barely recognized. Most of them were from the 30 names she had added to the guest list. Carol Whitmore's crowd, friends of friends, people who smiled at me with the vague warmth of strangers doing a favor. Derek Whitmore was there. He wore a navy blazer and sat next to my mother for most of the evening. She introduced him to guests like a campaign manager. "This is Derek. He's like a second son to me. Carol's boy. Wonderful young man." Marcus shook Derek's hand when they crossed paths near the bar. Derek looked away first. He held his cocktail at chest height like a shield and spent the rest of the night by the window. Tessa sat in the corner recording TikToks. She leaned into her friend and whispered something. They both looked at me and laughed. I pretended not to notice. After dinner, I drove home alone. Marcus went to his brother's house for the night. Tradition. Or maybe just distance from the noise. I lay on my bed in the dark. The ceiling fan clicked on every third rotation. I stared at it and tried to breathe. On the nightstand was a printed copy of the final guest list. I picked it up. Found row 3, seat 7, Derek Whitmore. I circled the name with a red pen. Not because I needed to remember, because holding the pen made me feel like I still had control of something. Marcus texted at midnight. 2 more days. I'm right here. I turned off the light. I didn't sleep. I woke at 5:45 on the morning of my wedding. The sun wasn't up yet, but the sky was turning gray along the ridge east of Knoxville. June air through the cracked window. No breeze. I showered. I ate half a granola bar. I drove to the venue in my sweatpants with my dress in a garment bag on the back seat. The venue was a garden estate on the outskirts of Farragut. Stone paths, boxwood hedges, a pergola draped in white fabric where the ceremony would take place. 200 white chairs in curved rows. The caterers were already setting up the cocktail hour tables. Rachel met me in the bridal suite at 7. She had the manila envelope in her tote bag. She didn't say anything. She just set it on the table next to my makeup kit and squeezed my arm. Hair and makeup took 2 hours. 2 other bridesmaids came and went. They talked about the weather, the flowers, the playlist for the reception. Normal things, safe things. At 9:15, my mother walked in. "You look beautiful, honey." She hugged me, her arms wrapped tight. I hugged back, but my body was stiff. She reached into the large tote bag she carried everywhere and pulled out a white envelope. Her handwriting on the front. "For Donna." She set it on the vanity. "I wrote you something. For later." I looked at the envelope. Then I looked at my mother's face. She was smiling the way she always smiles when she believes she is in control. She left the room. The door clicked shut. Rachel looked at me. I looked at the envelope. Then I looked at the manila one on the table. "It's happening," I said. Rachel opened the manila envelope at 9:32. She laid the documents across the vanity table one at a time. I stood behind her in my wedding dress, veil pinned, hands steady. The first page was a printed screenshot. Carol Whitmore's text to my mother, sent to the wrong group chat. "Is everything ready for Saturday? Derek is nervous. I told him once the intervention works, Donna will come around." The $40,000 was worth every penny. The second page was a Venmo transaction record. Carol Whitmore to Janet Ainsworth, $25,000, March 15th of last year. Memo, wedding arrangement. The third page was the second transfer. $15,000, August 22nd, same memo. The fourth page was a side-by-side comparison of 2 guest lists. The one I created, 170 names. The one my mother submitted to the venue, 200 names. 30 additions. All of them connected to Carol Whitmore's circle. The fifth page was another screenshot. My mother's reply to Carol, "Don't worry. Once Richard reads the speech, Donna won't have a choice. She won't humiliate herself in front of 200 people. I read every page. I read them slowly, the way I read exhibits before a deposition. No emotion, no rushing, just facts arranged in sequence. $40,000. That's what my mother thought my wedding was worth. That's what she thought my life was worth." Rachel stood next to me. She didn't speak until I did. "What do you want to do?" I stacked the documents, slid them back into the envelope, pressed the clasp shut. "Exactly what we planned." She nodded. She tucked the envelope into my clutch bag, white satin, small enough to hold in one hand. At 10:15, I stood in front of the full-length mirror in the bridal suite. White dress. Simple cut. No beading. No train. I had chosen it because it looked like something I would actually wear. Not a costume, not a performance. Rachel had switched my mascara 2 days ago without telling me. Waterproof. She knows me better than I know myself. My phone buzzed. "Marcus. Whatever happens out there, I'm marrying you today." I smiled at the screen. Then I set the phone face down on the vanity. At 10:20, Reverend Patricia Miles knocked on the suite door. She wore a cream-colored blazer and a calm expression. "I've been briefed," she said. "The ceremony will proceed. If there is an interruption, I will wait. When it is finished, I will continue. You have my word." I thanked her. She left. At 10:25, another text. "Hector Vega. Row 12, seat 3. I'm here." Rachel adjusted my veil. She pressed the clutch bag into my hand. The envelope inside weighed almost nothing. 5 pages. A few ounces of paper. But they held the truth about $40,000, a deal my mother made with another woman, and the man in row 3, who was part of the transaction. I looked at the vanity. My mother's white envelope was still there. For Donna. I picked it up. I turned it over once. Then I set it down. "I'll read it later," I said. "Or maybe never." Rachel opened the bridal suite door. The garden was full. I could hear low voices, chairs shifting on grass, a string quartet warming up. The coordinator said, 2 minutes, and held up a finger. And then the music started. Canon and D drifted through the open garden. 200 faces turned toward the back of the aisle. I stepped out of the bridal suite and into the sunlight. The grass was freshly cut. White rose petals lined the stone path. Wind chimes hung from the pergola, catching the breeze off the hills. I walked slowly. 1 step, then another. I kept my eyes on the end of the aisle where Marcus stood in a charcoal gray suit with his hands clasped in front of him. He was smiling. Not a big smile. The quiet kind that lives mostly in his eyes. Then I looked left. My father was not standing at the end of the aisle to walk me in. He was standing at the altar. On the platform, holding a wireless microphone. My mother was beside him, white envelope in her hand. She looked out at the crowd the way someone looks at an audience before a speech. My sister was on the other side of the platform. Phone raised, camera lens aimed down the aisle, red recording dot visible even from 30 feet away. I kept walking. My heels pressed into the grass. I held the clutch bag tighter. As I passed row 3, I caught a glimpse of him. Derek Whitmore. Gray suit, hair freshly cut, eyes on the ground. He looked like a man who wanted to be anywhere but here. I reached the altar. Marcus took my hand. His fingers were warm and steady. He leaned in close enough that only I could hear. "I'm here." I squeezed his hand. 200 guests settled into their chairs. The string quartet stopped. The garden went quiet except for the wind chimes and the slow turn of the overhead fans. Something was wrong. Everyone could feel it. Reverend Patricia stepped to the podium. She opened her ceremony book. She took a breath. "Dearly beloved." My mother's voice cut through the garden like a blade. "Wait. Before this goes any further, there is something everyone in this room needs to hear." 200 guests froze. A woman in the second row put her hand over her mouth. A man near the back leaned forward. My mother walked to the center of the altar platform. She took the microphone from my father's hand with a practiced motion, as if she had rehearsed this. She probably had. "I'm Donna's mother." She faced the crowd. Her chin was up. Her voice was clear and controlled. "I love my daughter more than anything in this world. Which is why I can't stand here and watch her make the biggest mistake of her life." A gasp rippled through the seats. Someone whispered. Someone stood up and sat back down. Janet turned to me. Her eyes were hard and certain. She believed she was saving me. That's the thing about my mother. She has never once questioned whether she's right. "Your father has something he needs to say to you." She extended the microphone toward Richard. He reached for it. His hand was shaking. Marcus stood beside me. His grip on my hand had not loosened. His breathing had not changed. He watched my father take the microphone the way an engineer watches a load test, calm, patient, already knowing the structure will hold. Rachel stood behind me in the bridesmaid line. I could feel her shift her weight. The clutch bag pressed against my side where she held it ready. Richard raised the microphone to his mouth. 200 people held their breath. My father held the microphone the way a man holds a hymnal he has never opened. He looked at the sheet of paper in his other hand. His eyes scanned it once. Then he started reading. "Marcus, we don't..." He paused. He swallowed. We don't know much about you. And as a father, it's my job to protect my daughter from financial risk. His voice cracked on the word risk. He wasn't a public speaker. He wasn't a confrontational man. He was reading someone else's words, and every syllable sounded like it. We've been told that your credit history isn't, he stumbled, that you have significant debts that Donna may not be aware of. Marcus didn't move. He didn't flinch. He stood there with my hand in his, shoulders straight, chin level. He looked at my father the way you look at someone who doesn't know they're being used. Richard kept reading. We're concerned that this marriage is based on incomplete information. We believe Donna deserves a partner who can provide the stability and security she's worked so hard for. Someone in the fifth row whispered, "Oh my God." A bridesmaid behind me inhaled sharply. I heard chairs creak as 200 bodies shifted in their seats. My mother stood beside my father, nodding. Slow, satisfied nods, like a teacher watching a student deliver the correct answer. Tessa was behind them, phone steady, lens zoomed in on my face. She was waiting for me to cry. She was waiting for the breakdown that would make the content she craved. I did not cry. I held Marcus's hand. I breathed through my nose. My father folded the paper. He looked at Janet. Then he looked at me. He didn't know what to do next. She did. My mother opened her letter. My mother just accused my husband of fraud in front of 200 people on my wedding day, and she's not done. If you're holding your breath right now, imagine how I felt standing there in that white dress. Stay with me, because what happened next is the reason I'm telling you this story. My mother unfolded the letter like a proclamation. She held it at arm's length. Her reading glasses were already on, perched at the tip of her nose. Dear Donna, her voice carried across the garden. I'm writing this because I know you won't listen to me any other way. She took a breath. The crowd was silent. Even the wind chimes had stopped. Marcus is not who you think he is. He has no savings. He has no family property. He cannot give you the life you deserve. I watched my mother's face. She believed every word. She believed she was delivering a rescue. That is the shape of her delusion. It looks exactly like love. She listed her evidence. Marcus rents an apartment. True. He invests in his career rather than real estate. My mother read that as failure. Marcus has no family wealth. True. He was raised by a single mother who worked 2 jobs. My mother read that as a warning sign. Marcus refuses to discuss his finances with us. Also true, because our finances are none of her business. My mother read that as secrecy. She folded the letter and looked at me. Then she looked past me, toward the 3rd row. There is someone who can give you everything you need. Someone who has been waiting for you. Someone this family has already welcomed. She pointed. Not a subtle gesture. A full extension of her arm, finger aimed at row 3. We can still fix this, Donna. Derek is waiting in the 3rd row. 200 heads turned at once. The sound of it, chairs squeaking, fabric rustling, breaths catching, filled the garden like a wave. Derek Whitmore sat in row 3, seat 7. He did not look up. The garden held its breath. 200 people stared at me. My mother stood at the podium with the letter at her side, chin raised, waiting for me to crumble. My father stood behind her, microphone still in his hand, face gray. My sister's phone glowed like a small eye. Derek Whitmore sat perfectly still in the 3rd row. His head was down. His hands were in his lap. He looked like a man who had been placed on a stage without his consent. 10 seconds of silence. The wind chimes swayed but didn't ring. A bird crossed the sky above the pergola. I squeezed Marcus's hand. He squeezed back. He gave me a nod so small that no one else in the garden could have seen it. But I saw it. And I knew. I turned to Rachel. She was already stepping forward. She held the clutch bag open. I reached inside and pulled out the manila envelope. It was light. 5 pages. A few ounces of printed paper. But it held the weight of $40,000 and 4 years of lies. I turned back to the podium. I looked at my mother. I looked at my father. I looked at the 200 people sitting in their white chairs, fanning themselves, wondering what they had just walked into. May I have the microphone, please? Richard handed it to me immediately. He didn't hesitate. The relief on his face was visible from the back row. He was done. I held the microphone in my right hand, the manila envelope in my left. I stood at the altar in my wedding dress, and I spoke. My voice was steady. I made sure of that. Thank you, Mom. I appreciate you sharing that with everyone. I let the words settle. My mother's eyebrows lifted. She expected tears. She expected surrender. She got neither. Now I'd like to share something with all of you. I held the microphone close. My voice was level. I spoke the way I speak in deposition prep. Clear, unhurried, precise. My mother is right about one thing. Marcus and I don't discuss our finances with my parents. That's because our finances are ours. But since we're being public today, let me be public too. I turned to Marcus. He gave me a single nod. Marcus Thompson is a licensed structural engineer. He has been employed at the same firm for 11 years. He has 0 outstanding debt. His credit score is 820. A murmur ran through the crowd. Someone in the 7th row whispered, I know this because I'm a litigation paralegal. I know how to verify facts. It's what I do for a living. I opened the manila envelope. I held up the first document, the guest list comparison. My mother submitted a guest list to this venue with 30 names I didn't approve. All of them connected to one family. I held up the second document, the Venmo records. I glanced at Tessa. She was still holding her phone up, but her hand was shaking now. The red recording dot pulsed. Keep recording, Tessa. The audience deserves to hear this too. Tessa's face went white. She didn't lower the phone, but she didn't steady it either. My mother's mouth opened. Then it closed. She looked at the documents in my hand the way a defendant looks at discovery they thought had been destroyed. I turned the page. Now let me tell you where my mother's $20,000 wedding contribution actually came from. I held up the Venmo printout. My hand was steady. My voice did not waver. March 15th of last year. Carol Whitmore transferred $25,000 to Janet Ainsworth. The memo reads, Wedding arrangement. I paused. Let the words land. August 22nd. Another transfer. $15,000. Same sender, same recipient, same memo. I lowered the page and looked out at the crowd. That's $40,000. From Carol Whitmore, whose son Derek is sitting right there in row 3. 200 heads turned to the 3rd row. Derek sank lower in his chair. His face was red. He stared at the grass between his shoes. My mother accepted $40,000 from another family to arrange my marriage, to a man I never agreed to marry. And when I chose Marcus instead, my mother decided to stop the wedding. The garden erupted, not with shouts, with whispers, the kind that sound like water rushing. Someone in the back stood up. Carol Whitmore, seated 4 rows behind Derek, pressed her hand to her chest and then dropped it into her lap. Janet stood frozen on the altar platform. Her letter hung limp in her hand. Her face had gone from composed to colorless in the span of 30 seconds. She opened her mouth. Donna. I wasn't finished. The $20,000 my mother offered to contribute to this wedding came directly from the $40,000 Carol Whitmore paid her. My mother used another family's money to buy a seat at the table she was planning to flip. Someone in the crowd said, she took the money. Not a whisper. A statement. Out loud. And every person in that garden heard it. My mother's composure cracked from the center outward, the way a windshield fractures when a stone hits it at highway speed. That's not... You don't understand. It wasn't like that. Carol was helping us. She wanted what's best for both families. Her voice pitched upward. She gripped the podium railing. Her eyes swept the crowd, searching for an ally. She found none. I did this for you, Donna. Everything I've ever done has been for you. Do you know what I've sacrificed? Do you know what it's been like watching you throw your life away? She was crying now, but the tears came too fast and too loud, the way they always come when Janet Ainsworth needs an audience to take her side. She wasn't grieving. She was performing. I had watched her do it at family dinners, At church. At my grandmother's funeral. You're embarrassing me. In front of everyone. How could you do this to your own mother? I held the microphone at my side. I didn't step closer. I didn't lean in. I spoke in the same tone I had been using since I started. You planned an intervention at my wedding, Mom. You accepted $40,000 to sell me to another family. And I'm the one embarrassing you? The murmuring in the crowd grew louder. A woman 3 rows back said it again. She took the money. A man near the aisle shook his head slowly. Janet looked at Tessa. Tessa had lowered the phone halfway. For the first time in her life, Tessa was not performing. She was staring at our mother the way you stare at a stranger who just did something terrible in a grocery store. My mother was alone on that platform. And she knew it. Richard Ainsworth had been standing at the back of the altar platform since he handed me the microphone. He hadn't moved. He hadn't spoken. He looked like a man who had walked into a room he didn't recognize. Janet. His voice was low, but the garden was so quiet that everyone heard it. What is she talking about? $40,000? My mother turned to him. Her mouth opened. She started to form a word. It didn't come. Did you take money from Carol Whitmore? It's not what it sounds like. My father stepped forward. His face was a shade of red I had never seen. Richard Ainsworth does not raise his voice. He has spoken in a flat Midwestern monotone for 61 years, but when he asked the next question, his voice cracked. Did you take $40,000 from that woman to arrange our daughter's marriage? Janet pressed her lips together. She looked at the crowd. She looked at me. She looked back at Richard. And for the first time in my memory, she had nothing to say. Richard turned to me. I didn't know about this, he said. He held up the crumpled paper. The speech Janet had written for him. I read what your mother gave me. I thought I was protecting you. I thought Marcus had... He stopped. He looked at Marcus. Then he looked at the floor. I should have asked, he said. He crumpled the speech tighter. He stepped off the platform. He walked past the front row, past the second row, past the third row where Derek Whitmore sat motionless. He kept walking until he reached the last row of chairs. Then he sat down alone. Nobody spoke. The wind chimes rang once, then went still. Row 3, seat 7. Derek Whitmore sat there through my father's accusations. He sat there through my mother's letter. He sat there through the revelation of the $40,000 that bore his family's name. Now he stood up. He didn't look at my mother. He didn't look at me. He straightened his jacket, pressed his lips together, and stepped into the aisle. Carol Whitmore was 4 rows behind him. She reached out as he passed. Derek, sit down. No, Mom. His voice was quiet, but it carried. This is done. He walked down the stone path. Past the rose petals, past the string quartet who had stopped playing 10 minutes ago and were now watching with their bows at their sides. He reached the garden gate, opened it, and walked through without closing it behind him. Carol Whitmore sat rigid in her chair. Her fingers gripped her purse strap. Her best friend of 18 years was standing on a stage being exposed in front of 200 people, and Carol couldn't look at her. The seat in row 3 was empty. The jacket imprint was still pressed into the white cushion. My mother watched Derek leave. I watched her watch him. And in her face, I saw it. The deal was dead. The money was wasted. The plan she had rehearsed and funded and protected for over a year had just walked out through a garden gate. I set the documents on the podium. I looked out at the crowd. Some people were crying. Some were furious. Some looked like they had just witnessed a car accident and were still processing what they saw. Does anyone else have something they'd like to say? Or can I get married now? Nervous laughter. Then one clap. Then another. Then the whole garden. Reverend Patricia Miles stepped to the podium as if nothing had happened. She opened her ceremony book to the marked page. She looked at me. She looked at Marcus. She smiled. Now, shall we begin? Marcus turned to face me. His eyes were wet, but he was smiling. That quiet smile. The one that lives in his eyes and doesn't ask for anything. I looked at this man who had stood beside me through every word of my mother's letter, every accusation from my father's lips, every second of silence that followed. He had not flinched. He had not argued. He had not defended himself with volume or anger. He held my hand. That was all. And it was everything. We said our vows. Mine were simple. I didn't write a speech. I didn't rehearse in the mirror. I said what I meant. I choose you. Not because my family approves. Not because it's easy. Because you've never once asked me to be anyone other than who I am. Marcus said his. You taught me that love isn't loud. It's patient. It shows up. Every single day. Reverend Patricia asked for the rings. Rachel handed them over. My hands were steady. Marcus's hands were warm. By the power vested in me by the state of Tennessee, I now pronounce you husband and wife. Marcus kissed me. 200 people stood. The applause was louder than the string quartet had ever been. Someone whistled. Someone cheered. And in my head, a sentence replayed. My mother's voice. We can still fix this, Donna. Derek is waiting in the third row. I looked over Marcus's shoulder at row 3. Seat 7 was empty. The white cushion still held the shape of a man who had walked away. After the kiss, I didn't walk back down the aisle. Not yet. The microphone was still on the podium. I picked it up. One more thing. The garden went quiet again. 200 people settled back into their chairs. Some leaned forward. Some gripped the armrests. My mother, still standing at the edge of the platform, looked at me with something between fear and exhaustion. I looked at her. $40,000. That's what my wedding was worth to you, Mom. That's what my life was worth. Not my happiness. Not my choices. $40,000 from a woman who wanted to buy a bride for her son. I paused. I let the number hang in the air. And I want you to know something. I would have loved you for free. All you had to do was show up and be happy for me. That's it. That was the price of keeping me. And you couldn't pay it. My mother made a sound. Not a word. A sound that came from somewhere deeper than language. Her face collapsed. The performance was gone. The manipulation was gone. What was left was a woman standing on a platform in a garden realizing that her daughter was not coming back. Not today. Maybe not for a long time. I set the microphone on the altar. I took Marcus's hand. We walked down the aisle together. The crowd stood again. This time the applause started from the front. Row by row it spread. A standing ovation that followed us all the way to the garden gate. We stepped through it. Marcus closed it behind us. And for the first time in 4 years, I exhaled. The reception was held in the garden pavilion. Fairy lights hung from the wooden beams. The caterer had arranged the tables in a semicircle around the dance floor. The DJ played Etta James as guests filtered in from the ceremony. 3 chairs at the family table stayed empty. Janet, Richard, Tessa. They had left sometime between the end of the ceremony and the start of cocktail hour. No one saw them go. No one asked where they went. Carol Whitmore's chair was also empty. The rest of the evening moved the way a good wedding should. Toasts, laughter. A first dance to a song Marcus and I had chosen 6 months ago. Rachel caught the bouquet and pretended to be surprised. Hector Vega stood during the reception and raised his glass. To Donna and Marcus, 2 people who know that real strength isn't about being loud, it's about standing still when the whole world tries to push you over. The room clapped. Marcus squeezed my hand under the table. We danced. We cut the cake. Marcus's mother cried into a napkin and told me she had been praying. His brother made a joke about structural engineering and load-bearing partnerships. People laughed, the kind of laughter that comes from relief as much as humor. But once, near the end of the night, I looked at the family table. The 3 empty chairs, the untouched place settings, the folded napkins no one would unfold. Marcus followed my gaze. You okay? I looked at him, then back at the chairs, then back at him. I will be. He took my hand. We went back to the dance floor. The fairy lights swayed overhead. The music played. And I let myself be happy for one night without asking what it would cost. The hotel room was quiet. We had booked a suite at the Hilton downtown, 12 miles from the venue. The AC hummed. The curtains were half drawn. City lights filtered through the gap. I sat on the edge of the bed in my dress. I hadn't changed yet. Marcus was beside me, tie loosened, jacket draped over the chair. On the nightstand was my mother's white envelope. For Donna. Rachel had grabbed it from the bridal suite vanity and tucked it into my overnight bag without asking. I picked it up. I turned it over. I opened it. The letter was 2 pages, handwritten in my mother's careful cursive. I read it in the quiet of that hotel room, while my husband sat next to me and said nothing. Most of it was what I expected. Guilt. Justification. The word sacrifice appeared 4 times. But at the bottom of the second page, the tone changed. I'm scared I'm losing you. I'm scared you'll forget where you came from. I'm scared he'll take you away from us and I'll never see my daughter again. I read those lines twice. They were real. I could feel the difference between performance and pain. That paragraph was pain. But pain doesn't excuse a plan. Fear doesn't justify a transaction. My mother was scared. And instead of trusting me, she tried to buy my future from a woman with a checkbook. I folded the letter. I put it in the nightstand drawer. I didn't throw it away. Marcus looked at me. What happens now? We go home. We build our life. And we wait. Wait for what? For them to decide if they want to be in it. He nodded. He turned off the lamp. The city lights stayed. I went no contact for 6 months. I changed my phone number. I blocked my mother, my father, and my sister on every platform. I told my firm's receptionist that if anyone named Ainsworth called the office, to take a message and nothing more. Janet tried to reach me through every back channel she could find. She called Marcus's mother. She called Rachel. She sent a letter to my office through the mail. She showed up at the townhouse once on a Tuesday afternoon. Marcus answered the door. She asked to see me. He said, "She'll reach out when she's ready." He closed the door. Tessa deleted her Instagram 3 weeks after the wedding. The live stream she recorded during the intervention had been screenshotted and shared across Knoxville. Someone posted a clip to a local gossip page. The caption read, "Sister helps mom sabotage wedding in front of 200 people." Tessa moved to Chattanooga. She hasn't called me. I haven't called her. Carol Whitmore and my mother are no longer friends. I heard from Rachel that Carol blamed Janet for the public exposure. Janet blamed Carol for the text message that started everything. $40,000 and 18 years of friendship, gone in a single afternoon. 3 months after the wedding, a letter arrived at my office. Handwritten. My father's blocky print on the envelope. No return address. Inside, 2 sentences. "I'm sorry I didn't ask. I should have asked." I read it at my desk. I read it again during lunch. I put it in my desk drawer, right next to my mother's letter from the hotel. 2 letters in a drawer. One from a mother who was afraid. One from a father who was late. I haven't replied to either, but I haven't thrown them away. Sunday morning, October. The townhouse smells like coffee and paint fumes from the guest room we're renovating. Marcus is at the kitchen table reading blueprints for a county bridge project his firm just landed. I'm sitting across from him in sweatpants and a college t-shirt, scrolling through paint samples on my phone. I got the promotion. Senior paralegal. Hector shook my hand and said, "You've earned this about 4 times before you were ready to hear it." Marcus looks up from his blueprints. He nods at the guest room. "Maybe a nursery someday." I smile. Maybe. We eat breakfast. We wash the dishes together. We don't talk about the wedding. Not today. On Thursday, I call my father. It's the first time in 6 months. We talk for 15 minutes. He tells me about his tomato plants. He tells me the gutters need cleaning. He tells me the neighbor's dog had puppies. We don't talk about the wedding. We don't talk about my mother. We don't talk about the letter. But the call happens. And that's something. When I hang up, Marcus asks, "How was it?" "Quiet," I say. But it was real. My mother has not reached out directly. She has not called, texted, or written since my father's letter. I don't know what that means. Maybe she's waiting. Maybe she's angry. Maybe she's ashamed. I don't expect her to come around. Not yet. Maybe not ever. But the door isn't locked. It's just closed. And if she ever knocks with clean hands, I'll answer. People ask me if I regret what I did at the wedding. I don't. Not because I wanted to humiliate my mother in front of 200 people, but because for 32 years I let my family decide what I was worth. I let them set the price. I let them write the terms. And on that day, in that white dress, in front of every person who mattered, I finally decided for myself. That's my story. One envelope, one aisle, and one choice that changed everything. If this reminded you that your life is yours to live, share this video with someone who needs to hear it. Thank you for being here. Drop a comment, hit subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.